There's a moment in every life when the carefully constructed walls of who we think we are begin to crumble. Maybe it arrives through loss, through love, or through the simple recognition that despite all our achievements and accumulations, something essential remains untouched, unfed, unknown. This isn't failure, it's grace. It's the universe's way of calling us home to ourselves. We spend so much energy trying to become someone, we forget to discover who we already are beneath all the becoming. The mystics knew this. The heart knows this. Even the mind, in its quieter moments, suspects this truth. What if the very thing we've been searching for has been waiting patiently inside us all along, wearing the face of this present moment? Picture a man in a three-piece suit standing at a Harvard lectern, absolutely convinced he had life figured out. That was me. Richard Alpert, psychology professor, respected academic, climbing the ladder of intellectual achievement with the confidence of someone who believed that knowledge was the ultimate currency. I had my PhD, my tenure, my research grants, my reputation. I was studying consciousness the way you might study a butterfly pinned to a board from a safe distance with clinical detachment, never suspecting that consciousness might be studying me right back. But consciousness has a sense of humor, and it doesn't respect our academic credentials. It was 1961 when Timothy Leary walked into my office with a little white pill and a question that would dissolve everything I thought I knew about the nature of mind and reality. "Want to have a religious experience?" he asked. Religious? I was a scientist, a rational man. I didn't do religious experiences. I studied them, categorized them, wrote papers about them, but something in his eyes, something beyond the mischievous grin, spoke to a part of me that had been waiting in the wind, G's of my carefully orchestrated life. 6 hours later, I was no longer Richard Alpert. I was awareness itself, swimming in an ocean of love so vast and immediate that every concept I'd ever held about the nature of existence seemed like a child's drawing compared to the living truth that was revealing itself. The professor disappeared. The achievements, the identity, the very sense of being a separate someone, all gone. What remained was pure being, pure knowing, pure love. For the first time in my life, I was home. When I returned to ordinary consciousness, I faced a problem that would reshape everything. How do you integrate an experience of the infinite into a finite life? How do you explain to your colleagues that you've just discovered that everything you've been teaching about the mind is like describing the ocean by studying a single drop? The scientific method, which had been my religion, suddenly felt like trying to catch the wind with a net. The medicine had cracked me open, but it had also revealed something that would haunt me for years to come. The experience was temporary. The love, the unity, the recognition of the divine nature of existence, it faded like a dream upon waking. This present moment is not a stepping stone to somewhere else. It's the destination itself. You've been trying to get somewhere all your life, and here you are. You've been searching for something all your life, and here it is. You've been seeking someone to love you unconditionally, and here you are, already held in the arms of a love so complete that it doesn't need your understanding or your appreciation to continue loving you. The now that you're experiencing as you hear these words is the same now that Buddha experienced under the Bodhi tree. It's the same now that Jesus experienced in the garden. It's the same now that every mystic and saint and awakened being has ever experienced. There is only one now, and it's always this one. There is only one presence, and it's always this presence. There is only one love, and it's always this love. This recognition doesn't come through thinking about it or trying to achieve it. It comes through a simple relaxing into what is already here. It comes through a letting go of the one who is trying to get somewhere else, trying to be someone else, trying to have some other experience. It comes through a radical acceptance of this moment exactly as it is, without needing to improve it or change it or make it more spiritual. The heart that has been seeking all along is already free. The love that you've been longing for is already flowing through you. The peace that you've been pursuing is already present as the very ground of your being. The awareness that you've been trying to cultivate is already awake as the very consciousness through which you're experiencing these words. You are already home. You have always been home. The journey was never about getting somewhere else. It was about remembering where you already are. The seeking was never about finding something new. It was about recognizing what was never lost. The spiritual path was never about becoming enlightened. It was about remembering that you are already the light. We're all walking each other home, and the beautiful truth is that home is not a destination we're walking toward. It's the very ground we're walking on. Every step is taken in the sacred space of the eternal now. Every breath is breathed in the kingdom of heaven. Every heartbeat is the pulse of the divine love that you are. The heart has indeed taken flight, but not to some distant realm of spiritual achievement. It has taken flight into this very moment, into this very experience, into this very ordinary, extraordinary, sacred, simple, profound, immediate presence of what you are. The flight is over. You have arrived. You have always been here. Welcome home. I found myself chasing that state, trying to recreate it, becoming addicted not to the substance, but to the glimpse of what I knew was ultimately true. I was like someone who had seen the sun and then spent years staring at candles, hoping they would provide the same light. This is the paradox of awakening through external means. The medicine shows you the door, but it doesn't teach you how to walk through it with your own feet. It reveals the kingdom of heaven within, but then leaves you standing at the gates, wondering how to enter without a key. I spent years in that liminal space, caught between the world of ordinary consciousness and the realm of the sacred, belonging fully to neither. The university became uncomfortable with my explorations. My research into consciousness expansion, my experiments with psychedelics, my growing questions about the nature of reality, none of it fit the neat categories of academic psychology. I was asking questions that made people nervous, pursuing truths that couldn't be measured or peer-reviewed. The walls were closing in, and I realized that the very institution that had given me my identity was now demanding that I choose: be a respectable professor or be a seeker of truth. That's when something deeper began to stir. The medicine had shown me the landscape of consciousness, but it hadn't taught me how to live there. I began to understand that the real work wasn't in achieving peak experiences. It was in learning how to bring that love, that awareness, that recognition of unity into the messy, beautiful, ordinary moments of human existence. The professor had to die for the seeker to be born. The ancient traditions spoke of this death and rebirth, this necessary dissolution of the false self to reveal the true self. But knowing it intellectually and living it are two entirely different things. I was about to embark on a journey that would take me from the hallowed halls of Harvard to the dusty roads of India, from the certainty of academic knowledge to the uncertainty of spiritual seeking. I didn't know it then, but I was about to meet the greatest teacher of my life, not in a classroom, but in the marketplace of the soul. The medicine had been my first guru, breaking open my carefully constructed world with the gentleness of a lover and the power of a cosmic bulldozer. But it was only the beginning. The real teaching was just about to begin, and it would come from the most unlikely source: a blanket-wrapped old man sitting by a fire in the Himalayas who would look into my eyes and see not the professor I had been or the seeker I was trying to become, but the soul I had always been. When the familiar structures of identity begin to dissolve, we discover that what we thought was solid was actually just a collection of stories, beliefs, and habits held together by the glue of repetition. The medicine doesn't create the awakening. It simply removes the veils that prevent us from seeing what was always there. But this recognition, this seeing, brings with it a profound responsibility. Once you know that the separate self is a construction, once you've tasted the nectar of unity, you can't simply go back to playing the old games with the same unconscious enthusiasm. This is why so many people who have profound spiritual experiences struggle with integration. They've seen the truth, but they haven't learned how to live it. They've touched the infinite, but they haven't learned how to embody it in their finite human experience. The medicine opens the door, but walking through it requires a different kind of courage. The courage to live from love rather than fear, to serve rather than to acquire, to be rather than to become. The real journey was just beginning. I was about to discover that the ultimate teacher isn't found in a substance or a technique, but in the very fabric of existence itself. Every person I would meet, every challenge I would face, every moment of joy and sorrow, all of it was about to become my classroom. The professor was becoming the student, and the curriculum was nothing less than the art of being human while remembering the divine nature of existence. As I prepared to leave Harvard, to leave the security of the known world, I carried with me a question that would guide me for the rest of my life. How do you love unconditionally in a world that seems designed to break your heart? The answer I would discover lay not in avoiding the heartbreak, but in learning to love the heart that breaks, to serve the world that wounds, to find God in the very places where God seems most absent. The medicine had taught me that separation is an illusion. Now I needed to learn how to live that truth, not just in moments of expanded consciousness, but in the checkout line at the grocery store, in conversations with difficult people, in the face of my own fears and limitations. The real work was about to begin, and it would require not just altered states of consciousness, but an altered way of being in the world. Something was calling me eastward, toward ancient wisdom and timeless truths. I didn't know his name yet, but somewhere in the mountains of India, an old man in a blanket was waiting for a Harvard professor who was ready to become nobody in order to discover who he really was. The heart was about to take flight, and the destination was not a place on any map, but a recognition that home had been here all along, disguised as this very moment, this very breath, this very beating of the heart that connects us all. When I first met Neem Karoli Baba, Maharajji as we called him, I was still carrying the weight of being somebody. I was Richard Alpert, former Harvard professor, seeker of truth, collector of experiences. I arrived at his ashram like a spiritual tourist, backpack full of books, head full of questions, heart full of longing. But he saw right through all of that. He looked at me with eyes that seemed to hold the entire universe. And in that moment, I realized that all my seeking, all my knowledge, all my carefully constructed identity was just elaborate clothing that I had mistaken for my true self. The first thing he did was laugh. Not at me, but at the cosmic joke of it all. This earnest American professor who had traveled halfway around the world to find what was already closer than his own breath. "You don't need to become anything," he said, though his English was limited and much of what he taught was transmitted through presence rather than words. "You already are what you're looking for. The problem is, you think you're somebody else." This was the beginning of the most radical deconstruction I had ever experienced. Everything I thought I knew about myself began to dissolve. The professor, the seeker, the man with the important questions, all of it started to feel like costumes I had been wearing for so long that I had forgotten they weren't my skin. Maharajji had this way of looking at you that stripped away all pretense, all performance, all the elaborate ways we try to justify our existence. Under his gaze, I was nobody special, and paradoxically, that's when I began to discover who I really was. The ego doesn't die gracefully. It fights for its life with every tool at its disposal: doubt, fear, spiritual pride, the need to be right, the need to be somebody. I went through periods of intense resistance, wondering if I was losing my mind, if I was betraying everything I had worked for. There were moments when I wanted to run back to the familiar world of academic achievement, where I knew who I was and what I was supposed to do. But something deeper kept me there, something that recognized the truth even when my mind couldn't grasp it. Maharajji taught me that becoming nobody isn't about self-annihilation. It's about recognizing that the self you thought you were is actually a collection of memories, preferences, and stories that have no more substantial reality than clouds in the sky. When you stop identifying with the cloud, you discover that you are the sky itself. When you stop being somebody, you become everybody. The boundaries that separate you from others, from life, from the divine, reveal themselves to be optical illusions of consciousness. This recognition didn't happen overnight. It was a gradual process of releasing layer after layer of false identification. I had to let go of being the smart one, the special one, the one who had all the answers. I had to release my attachment to my spiritual experiences, my need to be seen as evolved, my subtle pride in being a seeker. Each release was like a small death, and each death revealed more life underneath. The beauty of this process is that as you become nobody, you start to see the nobodiness in everyone else. You realize that beneath all our roles, our personalities, our dramas, we are all the same consciousness playing different parts. The businessman rushing to his meeting, the mother caring for her children, the beggar on the street corner, all of them are the same awareness, the same love, the same divine essence wearing different masks. This is when compassion stops being a concept and becomes a living reality. When you see that the person who annoys you is actually you in disguise, when you recognize that the person you judge is simply another expression of the same consciousness that you are, the heart opens in ways that transform everything. You stop trying to fix people and start loving them exactly as they are. You stop trying to change the world and start serving it from a place of recognition rather than separation. But this recognition, this seeing, this love, it comes with its own challenges. When you start to see the divine in everyone, you also start to see the pain that everyone carries. When your heart opens to the truth of our interconnectedness, it also opens to the suffering that comes with being human. This is where the real work begins, where the rubber meets the road of spiritual practice. The path of letting go is not gentle. It requires a kind of fierce compassion toward yourself and others, a willingness to feel everything without trying to fix it, change it, or escape from it. I discovered that we hold on to our pain, our stories, our limitations, not because we enjoy suffering, but because they give us a sense of identity, a feeling of being somebody. The victim, the wounded one, the one who has been wronged, these identities can become as addictive as any drug because they provide a sense of specialness, of significance. Learning to let go of these identities requires tremendous courage. It means being willing to face the void, the emptiness, the not knowing that lies beneath all our stories. It means trusting that what you are beyond your pain is more real than the pain itself. It means having faith that love is not just a feeling, but the very ground of being, even when that ground seems to be crumbling beneath your feet. Maharajji taught me that suffering is not a mistake, it's a doorway. Every loss, every disappointment, every moment of heartbreak is an invitation to go deeper, to release our grip on how we think things should be, to surrender to what is. But this surrender is not passive resignation. It's an active embrace of life in all its messiness, an unconditional yes to the human experience in all its beauty and terror. The letting go happens in layers. First, you let go of the obvious attachments, the need for approval, the desire for control, the fear of death. But then you discover subtler attachments, the need to be right, the attachment to your spiritual insights, the pride in being someone who has let go. Each layer of release reveals deeper layers of holding on until you realize that the very one who is trying to let go is another identity that must be surrendered. This is the paradox of spiritual practice. The more you try to become enlightened, the more you strengthen the ego that believes it can become enlightened. The more you try to let go, the more you reinforce the one who is holding on. At some point, you have to let go of letting go, surrender the one who is trying to surrender, and simply be present to what is already here. Through this process, I began to understand that service is not something you do, it's something you become. When you see that there is no real separation between yourself and others, when you recognize that the divine is present in every face you meet, serving becomes as natural as breathing. You don't help others because you should, or because it's good karma, or because it makes you feel better about yourself. You serve because you can't not serve, because the love that you are naturally expresses itself as care for all beings. This is when I began to understand what Maharajji meant when he said, "Love everyone, serve everyone, remember God." These weren't three separate instructions. They were three facets of the same diamond of awakened consciousness. When you love everyone, you naturally serve everyone. When you serve everyone, you naturally remember God. When you remember God, you naturally love everyone. It's a circle of grace that has no beginning and no end. The Siva Foundation, which we started years later, grew out of this understanding. We weren't trying to be do-gooders or save the world. We were simply allowing the love that we are to express itself through acts of service. Whether it was preventing blindness in Nepal, providing care for the dying, or feeding the hungry, each act of service was a form of worship, a way of honoring the divine that appears in the form of human need. But service, true service, requires that you see the divine not just in the people you're helping, but in yourself as well. You can't serve from a place of superiority or pity. You can't help others if you're trying to fix them or change them. True service happens when you recognize that you and the person you're serving are both expressions of the same consciousness, both perfect exactly as you are, both walking each other home to the love that we all are. This recognition transforms everything. The homeless person on the street corner becomes your teacher, showing you something about detachment and surrender. The person dying of AIDS becomes your guru, teaching you about courage and grace in the face of the ultimate letting go. The child in the hospital becomes your spiritual director, reminding you of the innocence and joy that exists beneath all our stories of suffering. In serving others, you discover that you are not the doer. You are the instrument through which love serves itself. The hands that comfort belong to love. The heart that opens belongs to love. The presence that soothes belongs to love. You become a hollow flute through which the divine breath creates its music of compassion. This understanding was deepened profoundly when, in 1997, life offered me its most challenging teaching. I was 65 years old, still traveling, still teaching, still thinking I had some control over my destiny. Then, in a moment that would redefine everything, my body betrayed me. Or perhaps it was the most compassionate thing my body ever did. It forced me to confront the ultimate lesson about surrender, about what remains when everything you think you are is stripped away. The stroke came like a cosmic 2x4 to the head. One moment I was Ram Dass, spiritual teacher, author, someone who had something to say about consciousness and awakening. The next moment I was someone who couldn't speak, couldn't walk, couldn't even remember how to form words. The irony was not lost on me. The teacher who had spent decades talking about letting go was now being forced to let go of everything, including the ability to talk about it. In the hospital, as I lay there unable to communicate, unable to move half my body, unable to perform even the most basic functions, I faced the ultimate test of everything I had taught. Was the peace, the love, the awareness that I had spoken about for 30 years still present when the instrument through which it had been expressed was broken? Was Ram Dass more than just a functioning body and a working mind? Was the truth I had pointed to still true when the pointer was shattered? The answer came not through thinking, but through being. Beneath the frustration, beneath the fear, beneath the grief for what I had lost, there was something that remained untouched by the stroke. There was an awareness that observed the damaged body, a love that held the broken parts, a peace that existed independent of circumstances. The stroke had taken away my ability to be somebody, but it had revealed more clearly than ever what I was when I was nobody. This was the teaching that no book could convey, no lecture could transmit, no experience could prepare me for. The stroke became my greatest guru, more ruthless and more compassionate than any teacher I had ever encountered. It stripped away everything non-essential and revealed what was essential. It took away my clever words and left me with pure presence. It took away my independence and taught me about interdependence. It took away my control and gave me surrender. The stroke taught me that the spiritual path is not about becoming invulnerable to suffering. It's about discovering what in you is already invulnerable. It's not about transcending the human condition. It's about finding the divine within the human condition. It's not about achieving some permanent state of bliss. It's about learning to find peace and love and awareness in the midst of whatever is happening, even when what's happening is the complete disruption of everything you thought you were. This understanding transformed how I saw not just my own journey, but the entire human predicament. For years, I had been trying to change the world, to wake people up, to fix what seemed broken. I had been a spiritual activist, believing that if enough people meditated, if enough people opened their hearts, if enough people remembered their true nature, we could create a different world. But the stroke taught me something much more radical than activism. It taught me about love as the only revolution that matters. Real love doesn't try to change anything. It simply sees what is and says yes. It doesn't improve people or fix them or make them more spiritual. It recognizes that what they are beneath all their confusion, their pain, their unconscious patterns is already perfect. This doesn't mean you become passive in the face of suffering. It means you serve from a place of recognition rather than judgment, from wholeness rather than the need to fix what you perceive as broken. When you stop trying to change the world and start loving it exactly as it is, something miraculous happens. The world begins to change itself, not because you're doing anything to it, but because love is the most powerful force in the universe. Love transforms not by force, but by recognition. It sees the divine in the murderer and the saint, in the addict and the sage, in the terrorist and the peacemaker. This seeing, this recognition, this unconditional love is what actually changes things. But this kind of love requires tremendous courage. It means loving your enemies, not because they deserve it, but because love is what you are. It means forgiving not because forgiveness is good for you, but because forgiveness is the natural expression of a heart that has remembered its true nature. It means serving not because the world needs fixing, but because service is how love moves in the world. After the stroke, confined to a wheelchair, dependent on others for basic needs, I discovered that my capacity to love had not diminished. It had been refined. Stripped of the ability to do much in the conventional sense, I could focus entirely on being. And in that being, in that presence, I found that love could work through me in ways that were more powerful than anything I had accomplished when I was able-bodied and articulate. This is the paradox of spiritual maturity. The less you try to do, the more gets done through you. The less you try to be important, the more important your presence becomes. The less you try to change others, the more they are transformed by simply being in your presence. Love working through you doesn't need your clever words or your impressive insights. It just needs your willingness to be present, to be open, to be available to what wants to emerge. The revolution of love is not about creating a new world. It's about recognizing the perfection that already exists within the apparent imperfection of this world. It's about seeing that what we call problems are actually invitations to love more deeply. War is an invitation to discover peace within ourselves. Hatred is an invitation to find the love that hatred cannot touch. Suffering is an invitation to discover the joy that exists beneath all circumstances. This doesn't mean you become complacent or indifferent to suffering. It means you serve from a place of love rather than fear, from presence rather than anxiety about the future. You work for change, not because you think the world is fundamentally broken, but because you recognize that your love wants to express itself through acts of service and compassion. Through this lens, even the most mundane aspects of daily life become sacred. The stroke had taught me that spiritual practice isn't just about meditation cushions and retreat centers. It's about finding the divine in the ordinary, the sacred in the mundane, the infinite in the finite. Every moment becomes a doorway to the divine when approached with presence and love. Washing dishes becomes a meditation on the nature of cleansing, not just of plates and cups, but of the heart. Each dish you wash is an opportunity to practice presence, to feel the warm water on your hands, to appreciate the simple miracle of having food to eat and the ability to clean up after yourself. The dish doesn't know it's being washed by a spiritual seeker. It simply receives the attention you give it. In that attention, that presence, that care, the divine expresses itself. Breathing becomes a direct connection to the source of life itself. Each inhale is a gift from the universe, each exhale an offering back to the whole. You don't have to do special breathing techniques or achieve altered states of consciousness. Simply being aware of the breath as it moves in and out of your body connects you to the rhythm of existence itself. The breath that fills your lungs is the same breath that moves the wind through the trees, the same life force that animates all beings. Even sitting in traffic becomes a spiritual practice when approached with the right understanding. Instead of seeing it as an obstacle to where you're going, you can recognize it as an invitation to be where you are. The frustration you feel about being stuck becomes a teaching about attachment, your attachment to being somewhere else, to having things be different than they are. The other drivers become your sangha, your spiritual community, all of you sharing this moment of being exactly where you are. This is what I mean by the sacred ordinary. The divine is not hiding in some special place that requires years of seeking to find. It's right here, right now, in the texture of this moment. It's in the feeling of your feet on the ground, the sensation of air moving in and out of your lungs, the sound of your heart beating in your chest. It's in the face of the person in front of you at the grocery store, in the smile of a child, in the bark of a dog, in the sound of rain on the roof. The spiritual path is not about escaping the ordinary world. It's about discovering that the ordinary world is already sacred. It's about learning to see with the eyes of love rather than the eyes of judgment. It's about recognizing that every moment is a gift, every breath is grace, every encounter is an opportunity to practice presence and compassion. But this recognition, this seeing, this presence, it doesn't happen in the future, it happens now. This is perhaps the most important teaching of all. What you're seeking is not waiting for you at the end of some spiritual journey. It's not hiding behind years of practice or levels of achievement. It's not reserved for special people or special circumstances. It's here, now, in this very moment, as close as your next breath. The eternal now is not a concept to understand, it's a reality to inhabit. It's not something you achieve through practice, it's something you remember you already are. Past and future are stories that exist only in the mind. The only moment that actually exists is this one. The only breath that actually matters is this one. The only heartbeat that actually counts is this one.